We'll be back at Raiders HQ today for OTAs. Who we'll talk to and what we'll be looking for. That plus a whole lot more comes up on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for June 4th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts to get the latest edition of the show as soon as it becomes available. As always, if you're giving us a look on YouTube, you know we appreciate that. The show grows each and every day. That's because of you, Raider Nation, and my man Ari. He does a great job each and every day making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, we're sounding good, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And again, that's because of my man Ari. So shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And you know we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line 707-654-4693. As always, we'll get your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3 and got plenty of feedback. A lot of great conversations we've had over the past week and a half or 2 weeks or so, and we've got a lot of feedback based off of that, so get as much in as possible coming up in segment number 3. Segment number 2, as we're back at OTAs, Raiders HQ a little bit later on this morning, depending on what time you're listening. What will I be looking for in particular? 3 different areas, 3 different not competitions, but just 3 things in particular that I'll be looking for. That comes up in segment number 2 of today's show. Here in segment number 1, just news and notes of the day, as I always do, and we'll jump into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. And as I mentioned, we will be back at Raiders HQ, and depending on what time you're listening to this, it could be already practice is over, or already the coordinator spoke with us, or the players spoke with us already, or maybe it's before practice. Everything gets started around 8:45 Pacific time, and as far as talking to the coordinators, that runs to from 8:45 till 9:40. Run game coordinator, linebackers coach Mike Caldwell, cornersback coach Ricky Manning Jr., and safeties coach Gerald Alexander. Those will all be made available to us before practice, and that you can stream that actually live on Raider Nation Radio 920 if you want to hear that. Of course, you can hear it on Raiders.com. They put that out on their Twitter as well. But those will be the coaches that will speak to us between 8:45 and 9:40. Again, Mike Caldwell, a longtime coach in the NFL, Ricky Manning Jr. and safety Gerald Alexander. They take over in the secondary. 2 guys that bring a lot of experience as far as playing and coaching across the National Football League. So we'll get a chance to catch up with those guys for the first time this year. Also, practice will run from about 9:50 to 11:50, and then after that, we'll have select players made available. They'll be right there on the practice field, or right next to the practice field. We'll get a chance to catch up with them right after that. They walk right off the field and rock over to the little tent right there, and that's when we get to meet with them. It's been 3 guys as of late, each and every practice, from the rookie minicamp to the other OTA sessions that we've been at, and we're expected, and this is always subject to change. It's not guaranteed that this is going to happen, but we're expected to talk with Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, and also Malcolm Kuntz. So that should be really good, as of course all OTAs, we're always paying attention to what's going on with the quarterback position. We know that there's a real competition when it comes to O'Connell and Minshew, so being able to have a chance to talk to both those guys following practice will be great. And then Malcolm Kuntz, who doesn't say a whole lot. He's not the most talkative dude, but with the season that he put in, especially the second half after AP took over as the head coach on November 1st, you know what he was able to do. So it'll be great to be able to catch up with him for the first time as well. So really some good names to talk with: Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, and Malcolm Kuntz. And remember, that can always be subject to change, but that's who's expected to speak with us. Coming up in segment number 2, I'll tell you what I'll be looking for coming up in practice today, as there's one more round of OTAs this week, and then next week will be mandatory minicamp. And then the Raiders will be off for the summer until they break for training camp in Costa Mesa. So there's not too many more opportunities for us to be out there. So we definitely appreciate each and every one of those opportunities. We found out on Monday about Larry Allen, the Hall of Fame guard for the Cowboys and the 49ers, died at 52 years old on Sunday. He was actually vacationing in Mexico. He died suddenly. It was a shock around the National Football League. Saw a lot of players, including Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman and others, Michael Irvin, really affected by this when it comes to, again, the Cowboys and the fact that Larry Allen was that Hall of Fame guard for them and the Niners for a very long time. But just a big-time player. There's a reason why he was a first-ballot Hall of Famer. I actually got a chance on my radio show to catch up with Shereen Williams, who is the one who presented him to the Hall of Fame. I thought that was great. Not that, like she said, not that my presentation had to do anything. All I had to really do is stand up and say, Larry Allen, and then sit down, and then they would say, yeah, he's in, first ballot Hall of Famer. But she gave a nice little 7-8 minute presentation. Larry Allen's in the Hall of Fame, but passed away on Sunday, again, suddenly in Mexico. And why I bring this up is because, and I saw this tweeted, and I saw it on Monday, AP, who was on the Rush podcast, Max Crosby's podcast, he was one of the first guys that were on that show back in February, I want to say, is when it was. Max actually asked him about who was the toughest player that he ever went against. And, of course, as you can guess, he said Larry Allen. Check it out.
Who was the hardest guy you had to play against when you were playing, and why?
Larry Allen. And this dude got his pants rolled up, and I see this circle, this piece, this object in his goddamn sock. And he went right here. What are you talking about? Right here, meaning like, if you run a play here, he comes off the nose tackle and just, bam, hits me. Oh, Dip in his mouth, tobacco right here, and would tell you where the play was going and dared you to run through his gap. I ain't gonna lie, I didn't want no smoke. I didn't want no smoke. Funny story. So 2006 offseason, he gets released. Yeah, he's not in division no more. He signs with the Niners. So then the schedule comes out. Guess who we play? The Niners.
Week 1.
I'm like, hell no, I'm gonna get his ass. He's older though. So Larry never pulls. I call it cow tipping. When a big lineman is going this direction, you can tip him over like a cow. But if he squares up on you, don't want no smoke. Big Larry turns that corner, and boom, I hit him. He go down, he looked up, I start running.
So I thought that was pretty cool. That's what AP said. And again, that was back in February. That was far before Larry Allen passed away. But just, I like the description from AP, and you could just hear how tough Larry Allen was. And there was, pictures of him floating around on Monday on Twitter, times where he did 42 reps at 225, bench pressing, time where he was in the Cowboys locker room, bench pressing 700 pounds. I mean, that was just a mean, tough dude on the field, a gentle giant off the field, nice, like a teddy bear, really nice dude in general, but a hell of a player. So again, the NFL world was hit pretty hard when they found out on Monday about the passing of Hall of Fame guard Larry Allen, passed away on Sunday in Mexico. Also, one more little nugget that I wanted to pass along here in segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Former Raider tight end Darren Waller is expected to retire. This is according to Jordan Raanan from ESPN. He covers the Giants like a glove, does a fantastic job. Put out a piece on ESPN.com and on Twitter on Monday saying Darren Waller is expected to make a decision by next week's minicamp on his playing future. People in and around the team expect he's going to retire. That's what multiple sources told Adam Schefter and me. Would be a pleasant surprise if he decided otherwise. And I always root for Darren Waller. I've said that from the jump. Even when the Raiders traded him to the Giants, I always felt like he probably wasn't in the best place. Didn't seem like he was in the best place once Josh McDaniels and company took over with the silver and black. He got the contract extension, but never really seemed like he was into it too much. Of course, we found out the news about him and his former wife, Kelsey Plum. Again, I don't get into everyone's personal business, but that was made very public by her, and then obviously others as well. He's put out a few music videos, one responding to the divorce of Kelsey Plum. But I just hope that Darren Waller is in a really good place. If he decides that he's done playing, he wants to retire, I don't blame him. I'm sure his body's gone through a lot of wear and tear, not only from on the field, but off the field. I just hope that he's in a good place, mentally, and he's feeling comfortable with whatever decision he ends up making moving forward. But Darren Waller's a guy, regardless of whatever team he plays for or doesn't play for, I'll always root for him, the man himself, just because of everything that he had to overcome in his life. And I root for guys like that, and I think more of us should, and I'm sure Raider Nation does, have a nice spot in their heart for former tight end Darren Waller, who is now expected to retire. Again, that's according to Jordan Raanan from ESPN. But that's what I got for you with segment number 1. Today's Locked On Raiders podcast, little news and notes of the day. Coming up with segment number 2. What is it that I'll be looking for at today's OTAs? I'll break it down, give you 3 different things that I'll be looking for. We'll do it next on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about Gametime. And the NBA Finals are set to get started on Thursday. The Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. If you want to get to the NBA Finals, you want to be sitting courtside or just in the arena in general, Gametime is going to make it easier, faster for you. Prices on Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. Great last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime will take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can do anything, though. It doesn't have to be just the NBA Finals. It could be baseball games. It could be comedy shows. It could be theater. It could be anything that Gametime provides, which is just about everything. And as I mentioned, they have great last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for any event that you want to go to. They've got all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees when you check out. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you actually see what it looks like when you're sitting in your seats. Right now, just take the guesswork out of buying NBA final tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create the account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to let you know what I'll be looking for in OTAs. This will be the final opportunity for us to be out and check out their OTAs before next week's Mandatory Minicamp. Then once Mandatory Minicamp's done, then it's just about done for the summer, right? Until it's time to hit training camp, and that'll be in Costa Mesa. And as soon as I get the dates on that, when we'll officially be out there, of course, I'll bring it to the table. But one of the last few times we get a chance to see these guys in action before training camp. So there's 3 things that I'll be looking for in today's practice. And of course, off top, you got to look at Aiden O'Connell versus Gardner Minshew, right? Last time that we were able to be out there last week, it was really the defense had their way with the offense in general. Neither Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew looked very good. The time before that, Aiden O'Connell looked a lot better than Gardner Minshew. And we know this is going to be one of those where it can fluctuate and change by the day, right? And especially when we get to training camp, I can come back and say, man, today's day was fantastic. Aiden O'Connell was on fire. And then I can come back the next day, man, Aiden O'Connell stunk. Gardner Minshew was great. He did this, that, and the other. I mean, it's going to be, I believe, a lot of back and forth. I think the competition is going to be very close when it's all said and done. I've said that many times. I think Aiden O'Connell is the leader in the clubhouse, and also his relationship with AP, the trust that AP has in him, will probably be the deciding factor if it is as close as I believe it's going to be. But every day that we're out there, get a chance, got to come back and talk about, what the quarterbacks look like. And if they don't look very good, just say, hey, man, you know what? They just didn't look very good. Just like last week, the defense looked really a whole lot better than the offense did, right? The offense threw a lot of swing passes. They didn't go very far. The defense was stringing them out, and that's something that you got to be concerned about when it comes to a Luke Getsy offense, right? I mean, everything that I've heard, all the research that I've done, one of the problems that he ran into in Chicago was too much horizontal stuff. Not enough north and south stuff. It was more sideline to sideline, and that's not going to get it done. Defenses are going to catch up. Look, they get paid. They're fast. They're big, fast, and strong as well. So they're going to try to string out as many plays as possible and make them minimal gains. So I want to see Aiden O'Connell, want to see Gardner Minshew. They do the 11-on-11. They do the 7-on-7. They've been splitting reps with the ones, so it's not like one's running with the ones and one's not. I want to see what they look like. And, of course, it's going to be, you have to remember, 1, there's no pads. 2, Colton Miller hasn't been out there, practicing at all as he's coming back from that shoulder surgery. Devontae's not out there. He's not practicing. So they don't have their full array of everybody out there, but you still like to get a good idea of what the quarterbacks look like. So first and foremost, get a good idea, get a good look. I'll try to get some good video and pictures that I tweet out at your boy Q254 of Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. Normally I focus in on the defense, but today I'll definitely focus in on what the quarterbacks look like. And like I said, send some video out, send some pictures out, especially since we'll be talking to those guys after practice. Secondly, what I'll be paying attention to: will Jackson Powers-Johnson, JPJ, will he return to practice? A couple weeks ago at OTAs, matter of fact, the first OTAs that we actually got a chance to see, not rookie minicamp. We saw him then. We actually talked to him following rookie minicamp. But then the next time we were out there at OTAs, he practiced about half the practice and then left during that session, and we haven't seen him. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not out there. It just means that when we're there, he hasn't been out there since he left early from that practice a few weeks ago. So I want to see if he returns. He's a guy that I expect to be the starting left guard when the season starts, when the Raiders are in LA taking on the Chargers. But you can't earn that starting job if you're not out there. And I get it. This is all voluntary, right? It's not, you're not earning a job right now, but for a rookie, you want him to get into the mix as much as possible, do as much time in the classroom and as much time on the field as possible, just to kind of get acclimated to what the NFL game is like and get acclimated to his teammates next to him. And again, Colton Miller hasn't been out there, but Andre James is out there. Dylan Parham is out there. Thayer Munford is out there, right? I mean, you got to start putting the pieces together. So I really want to see if JPJ returns. I would like to see him out there. Again, I think he could be a really good player. His biggest key moving forward is going to be staying healthy, right? If you go back and look at the history of him at Oregon, he did have some injury issues, right? He had a few concussion issues as well, something that I really want to focus in on and pay attention to see if that's something that's going to affect him moving forward in the NFL. So we'll see. Hopefully, like I said, he's back out there, but definitely something I'll be paying attention to. So Aiden O'Connell versus Gardner Minshew, and then also Jackson Powers-Johnson. Will he return to practice? Will we be able to see him later on today? And finally, special teams, right? And it's funny talking about special teams because it's never something that, I come here and I'm like, man, I got to see what's going on with special teams. Can't wait to see what Daniel Carlson looks like. Can't wait to see what AJ Cole looks like. Can't wait to see what the kick returners look like. But honestly, with the new kickoff rules and the way that the Raiders have been working special teams, and, we're not allowed to talk about every single thing that we see there at practice. There's certain, formations that they run sometimes. We're not able to tweet everything and say, oh, they're running this by this by this, and, all these different formations, or, oh, just saw this trick play and this is what it was. Like, we're literally not allowed to say that. But they've been working on a lot of different formations for this new kickoff rule, and we've seen them, do a lot of different variations of it. And I do believe Tom McMahon, the special teams coach, he was one that we talked to a couple weeks ago, and he was fantastic. He was very entertaining, and you can see he was very fired up by the opportunity of this new kickoff rule and how the Raiders could benefit. Now, with that being said, all 32 teams in the National Football League are going to have an opportunity to benefit from this new special teams rule, but who can do it best? Right? And who can learn from other teams and take that and add that to the mix as well. The Raiders have been working on special teams a lot. Daniel Carlson has been doing a lot of kickoffs. AJ Cole's been helping with the kickoffs as well, just trying to get these kick returners in line and get them used to fielding balls that are bouncing. They've even been using the jug machine to bounce the ball to the returners and see how they do fielding it. And the guy who's been looking the most comfortable, believe it or not, is 6th-round pick Dylan Lobby, the wide receiver, or the running back, out of New Hampshire. He's been looking the best so far, the most comfortable when it comes to receiving the ball off the bounce, when it comes to just getting that, be the kick returner, catching the ball, making one move and go. I think that he's going to have an opportunity to be a big-time player, especially on special teams to start off with. But I'll definitely be looking for 23, but I'll really be paying attention to what's going on with the special teams unit in general. What does the kickoff coverage look like? Because, again, it's a lot more difficult, a lot different than it's been in the past. And so want to see how that's impacted. And I think the teams that learn the new kickoff rule and how to maximize it the quickest, you're going to see them be successful in the National Football League. You're going to see them have a lot of better, starting field position. You're going to see them be able to take advantage. The Raiders are trying to be that team. So believe it or not, one of the areas that I'll really be focused in on, and they spend some good quality time in special teams, is going to be the special teams unit. Who's returning kicks? Who looks comfortable returning kicks? How do they do on kick coverage? What does Carlson and AJ Cole look like? Everything that has to do with special teams, when they start working on that, it used to be one of those areas where you just kind of, I'll look at it a little bit, but not really pay attention that much. I'll try to focus in on something else. When they're doing special teams, I'm locked in, and I'll be locked in today. So those are the 3 areas that I'll really be focused in on in OTAs. And, of course, we'll be focused in on speaking to Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, and Malcolm Kuntz following practice. But, again, the quarterback competition, O'Connell and Minshew, JPJ, will he return to practice? And what does special teams look like is what I'll be looking for today at OTAs at Raiders HQ. And please believe I'll be there bright and early in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, as a matter of fact, to help Vinny Bonsignore get set up for the morning tailgate so they can broadcast live on Raider Nation Radio 920 from there. So, it'll be a whole day at Raiders HQ, but that's just how I roll. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And it's winner take all time in the NBA and the NHL. The NBA Finals is set. We've got the Dallas Mavericks and the Boston Celtics. The NHL, the Stanley Cup Finals, that is set. You got Edmonton. You've got Florida. Florida makes a return for the second season in a row. They lost to the Golden Knights last year, but they're trying to, try to hoist that Stanley Cup, taking on Edmonton. Right now, FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bets. $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and a whole lot more. All you got to do is go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Trucker Ken in Central Florida, calling to talk about the X Factor conversation. As a second-year guy, he believes can be him, and it's not quarterback Aiden O'Connell. Here he is, Trucker Ken in Central Florida.
Hey, what's up, Q? This is Trucker Ken from Central Florida, and just got done listening to your podcast. Great as usual. First thing I listen to every morning when I'm out making runs, man. Love it. I just wanted to comment on one of the questions that you posed yesterday, which is who's our X Factor. And I think the X Factor is going to be Tyree Wilson. And I think that because, he's been working with Max all offseason. He's, bulking up. He's getting his body right. And it looks like, from everything I've been seeing online, that he's taking this seriously. He's, probably being overlooked because of what he did last year, and for good reason. But I think he's been in the lab with, our stud, and hopefully he's listening. And Max seems to have nothing but good things to say about him. So I'm super excited. I think that if you have Max on one end, Malcolm on the other, and then you put Tyree in the middle with that new, monster that we got from Miami, in Christian Wilkins, I think you're cooking with fire. And I think that we're going to end up having the best defensive line in all of professional sports, football. And I think that it just makes everybody better. So anyway, my opinion on who our X Factor will be is Tyree Wilson. Hey, man. Anyway, have a good day. And as always, go Raiders.
Ken, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate you. Tyree, that's a really good selection. If you heard Monday's episode and you heard the conversation that I was having with Pro Football Focus about their piece, Tyree was a guy that was under consideration as well. And so he could be that guy for every reason that you mentioned. He's more comfortable out there playing. At least it looks like he's more comfortable. He has bulked up. He's in better shape. Not that he was in bad shape, but he's just in better shape. Been working on his nutrition. He's been in Max Crosby's back pocket, and it just really, he sounds the part. He looks the part. He's healthy. And if he can end up being that guy that he was expected to be when the Raiders took him number 7 overall, then all of a sudden you're getting another first-round pick, right? Basically, he had a redshirt year his rookie year. Even though he played a little bit, you saw him come on towards the end of the season. If all of a sudden he can come back healthy this year and be that guy, and you've got Max Crosby already. Of course, Christian Wilkins in the middle, the big man. Malcolm Kuntz, he came on strong in the second half of the season last year. Also, if you can have Tyree Wilson be a part of that as well, now you've got what I call all the time bloodthirsty Pirates on that defensive line. You already have bloodthirsty Pirates on the defensive line, but now you're taking it to a whole nother level. So, yeah, Tyree definitely could be that guy. It's up to him to take the bull by the horns and make it do what it do, but he definitely has the ability. He's got the size. He's got the strength. He's just got to have the know-how. And it seems like getting under the wing of Max Crosby is only going to help him. And, again, even if you listen to him when he talked to us at OTAs, a week and a half ago or so, he even sounds more comfortable in his role than he did his rookie year. Just knowing makes everything that much better. Trucker Ken, thanks so much for that call, my man. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider B from the 860. It says, hey, Q, it's Raider B from the 860. Been watching the podcast the last few weeks and also following the national media. Don't really understand why the media is so down on the Raiders this year. 6.5 wins, 23rd ranked roster. I really think Aiden and Zamir will be good this season. My biggest concern is cornerback opposite Jack Jones. I just didn't see enough from Bennett last season. This defense will be elite with a solid number 2 corner. I don't think people really understand the effect AP has on this team. Anyways, thanks for what you do. Raiders. That's Raider B from the 860. And the funny thing is, the win total for the Raiders is always really low, right? 6.5. I think that that's easy money. I believe that they go over that, and they go over it pretty easy. 3 out of the last 4 years, they've gone over the win total. So I'm right there with you. I talked about the 23rd ranked roster on my radio show on Monday, and it's funny. I was going through Pro Football Focus and all their different rankings for different positions, and positions like cornerback don't even have anybody from the Raiders on there. Positions like linebacker don't have anybody from the Raiders represented, right? Of course, they have, the Devontae Adams. I think he was like ranked 6th as far as wide receiver. Max was top 5. Christian Wilkins was top 10. I think Trayvon Merrick was like number 23. Aiden O'Connell was like number 31, I believe, quarterback. Zamir White was 32 as far as running back goes. But there wasn't a whole lot of recognition, and acknowledgement to the Raiders roster. So I feel like a lot of people nationally don't think that the Raiders have a very talented team, but I would argue that they do have a very talented team, and they're probably going to shock some folks. And again, I do believe that defense, like you said, can be elite. They do need to make sure that they shore up whoever's going to be across from Jack Jones. That's been an area of concern for me. Who's going to be that guy across from Jack, right? Is it going to be Jacorian Bennett in his second year? Is it going to be a guy like Brandon Faison, right? They have other guys, MJ Devonshire, who they drafted out of Pitt. They got DeCameron Richardson, who they got out of Mississippi State. There's a few others as well. Or do they go outside the building, right, with that extra money that they have? Do they go and get a Stephon Gilmore? Do they go and get an Xavier Howard? Do they go and get some Steven Nelson, right? Some kind of veteran that they feel comfortable with that could solidify that spot. Remember last year, they went outside the building and got a veteran that they thought would solidify the spot in Marcus Peters, and he didn't even last the whole season. Hell, he barely lasted half a season, and he had, a couple of good moments, and then the rest was bad. Unfortunately, we knew Marcus Peters was not the guy he was when he, first came into the league with the Chiefs or, hell, even with the Rams. But, man, he was just not good. So maybe a guy like Jacorian Bennett, maybe he could step up and take another step. Again, we saw a very small sample size from him last season. He got injured, dealt with the hamstring injury, so that set him back a little bit. Does he take that next step? Somebody has to step up and be that number 2 corner. If they don't have a true number 2 corner that they feel very confident in, what other teams are going to do is what? They're going to go away from Jack, they're going to go away from Nate, and they're going to target that dude. You're only as good as your weakest link. So if that other corner is not very good, that other corner is going to get a ton of attention. Raider B, thanks so much for the text. I definitely appreciate you. And maybe that'll be an area that I pay attention to today as well. I was looking to see what that other corner across from Jack Jones and Nate Hobbs, what he will look like, whoever that is, or whoever looks best out there, I should say, in that position. Thanks so much. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Rich in the 831. He's calling to talk about what he heard on SiriusXM radio when it comes to the Raiders and the quarterback competition between Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew.
Hey, what's up, Q? It's Rich from 831, man. Hey, so every once in a while, I listen, well, not once in a while, a lot of times I listen to a couple of shows on SiriusXM, NFL radio, and these 2 guys I listen to, they're really good, actually. They have their pulse on the whole NFL. He's a former executive, former scout. So they're really, really, abreast of what's going on in the NFL. And they were talking Raiders, and they said some interesting stuff. They really feel the Raiders could go 10-7. And it's not out of the question that they go 10-7 and make the playoffs. They like the team. They like the roster. But I found what one of the guys said pretty interesting. He said he thinks the Raiders can win more games with Minshew, because Minshew's crafty, but he thinks that the job is going to be won by Aiden O'Connell. I thought that was interesting, and I feel the same way. And it got me thinking a little bit. Do you think that maybe sometimes a coach can be a little too loyal, in the words like, just kind of sticking to your guns too much? Kind of like, AP did last year with Aiden, and he's trying to ride it out again this year. You think that's the case, or is really the best man going to win? Because I kind of get this feeling now that Aiden's going to win regardless of what happens. That's just the feeling I get. And I kind of agree with that host. Hey, like the Raiders could win more games with Minshew. And it might only be 2 more games. But at the end of the day, that's 2 games. And again, I don't know. But is there such a thing, you think, as that being a little too loyal? Kind of like that Minnesota game last year, right? I thought they should have went to Jimmy G just to see, hey, let's get a spark. Let's see what happens. Not to start a quarterback controversy. Jimmy's going right back to the bench after the game. But I don't know if I'm making any sense, man. Hopefully I can hear your answer, because I'm really, really curious to get your take, because you have the pulse on the Raiders on that. Anyways, Q, man, appreciate what you do. as always, go Raiders. There's only one nation, baby.
Rich, thanks for the call. Appreciate you as always, my man. And it's a really good question, right? Can coaches be too loyal at times? Can AP be too loyal? I think that there's no doubt that's a real possibility, right? I think that's the fine line that coaches are dealt. They have to walk that fine line about being too loyal, and maybe giving a guy too much, opportunity and too much rope. And then, pulling the rope too quickly, like having too short of a leash where they ruin a guy's confidence, right? That's a fine line that you really got to work. And I think that's a good thing for AP. That's why he has other coaches on the staff that have experience. So if he has any questions like that, he can bounce it off of Marvin Lewis. He could bounce it off of Joe Philbin. He could talk to guys that have been there, done that. Hey, what are you seeing? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? Yeah, AP, I think that it's time to pull the plug on this guy and go get somebody else in. Because I'm like you. I thought in that Vikings game, since they only lost 3-0, that was an opportunity where Jimmy G could have came in, maybe gave him a spark in that game, similar to what Minnesota did, right? They put Nick Mullins in to try to save the day, and he was at least able to generate 3 points, and that ultimately won the game. Now, AP said that was good for them. It wasn't good for the Raiders. He's a very loyal dude. So, yeah, that can get caught up. The only reason I think that this will be a real deal competition is because they did give Gardner Minshew $15 million fully guaranteed. 2-year, $25 million deal, but 15 fully guaranteed. So he's going to get that. So I do think that that's going to allow for a competition, and I do believe the competition is going to be close. But the trust and the confidence that AP has in O'Connell, I think, will be the separating factor in who earns the starting job. But because of that money that Minshew is getting, I think it'll be closer to a real competition as opposed to, we're saying there's a competition, but really it's O'Connell's job. I think he's definitely going to have to go out there and earn it. Rich, thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. From Rich in the 831 to Ricardo in El Paso. Got a text from Ricardo. He says, Q, been a fan since the 80s. I'm excited for many things this upcoming season, but most of all is for the development of AP and Aiden O'Connell. If O'Connell has even a 10 to 15% improvement this offseason and the defense has a small improvement, which it should, we're going to be competitive as can be and excited to watch for sure. I'll be in Vegas for the October 27th versus the Chiefs game. Keep up the good work, Q. That's from Ricardo in El Paso. And that's the thing. I'm excited about AP and the growth as well for him. And he said it best. His worst day as a head coach was going to be his first day. His first day was November 1st. He is obviously a lot more comfortable in that role. He earned the head coaching job with the Silver and Black. He's put a really good staff, in my opinion, around him. So it's not like he's the end-all, be-all, and he's acting like he knows everything. He's humble enough to say, hey, there's certain things that I'm, maybe not be as comfortable with, that I can lean on other guys, as I mentioned before, like a Marvin Lewis, like a Joe Philbin, guys that have been there, done that as head coaches in the league, especially with Marvin Lewis, who was a longtime head coach in the National Football League, and obviously AP has a really good relationship with them. I can see him leaning heavily on those guys, in-game decisions, all kind of different situations could pop up where AP needs to lean on them. And again, like I mentioned, even Patrick Graham, I just see, him not being that guy where in was it Patrick Graham? No, in Marvin Lewis's words, where he said he's not so stuck on himself where he can't ask questions or he won't listen to other people. There's some coaches, and I think we all know who the Raiders have had that have been coaches that don't listen to anybody. Josh McDaniels, he didn't listen to anybody but him, right? Didn't want to hear anybody but him, and that's just how it was. Hell, even John Gruden, and I was a big fan of John Gruden, still am, still respect what he was able to do with the Silver and Black. He obviously has history with the team. We all knew it was the end-all, be-all was him. Right, the buck stopped with John Gruden. What he said goes. So I like the fact that AP doesn't mind asking questions to others and getting advice from others. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a call from St. Louis Raider. He's calling to talk about who he believes the X factor could be for the Raiders based off a few conversations we've had here on the show, the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here he is, St. Louis Raider.
Hey, what's going on, Q? This St. Louis Raider. Hey, man, I just want to call in. You were asking who we thought the X factor was on the team. I believe the other day you said that the X factor was going to be AP. Man, I disagree with you. And I only disagree because to me, the X factor is unknown. Who's going to bring something unknown? And I think that we know what AP is going to bring. I think we saw it last year. We know the kind of guy he is. He's going to bring it every week. He's going to hold these guys accountable. He's going to bring that attitude and that swag every week. So I think we know what we're going to get from AP. Now, do we know What it's going to produce, we don't know. You know, last year it worked out pretty decent, but I think the X factor really is Aiden O'Connell this year. Last year we saw bits and pieces of really good, and we saw some pieces that were really bad. So who do we get this year? I don't know. So to me, that's the guy. I do know this from listening to him on Max Crosby's podcast. Him staying in town, being in the facility, working, he physically looked different. Running practice on his own with Trey Tucker. All you can ask for a guy is just to give you everything and show up and be prepared, and I think he's going to do it. I think he's already doing it. I think he's going to be the guy. If you had a second X factor, I think it's going to be the offensive line. If they can give him time, I think he's really going to step up and make that second year improvement. First time caller, love the show, gives me something to listen to while I'm working midnights, makes that hour go by fast every night. Appreciate it, Q.
St. Louis Raider, thanks for the call. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you being a first-time caller as well. And, yeah, I did say AP could be the X factor because I think that he has a way of getting the most out of these players, right? Putting them in the best position to succeed. That's what you saw the second half of the season once he took over on November 1st, and I believe that you'll continue to see that. That's an area that I look at that, yeah, that's a difference maker right there in AP. But as far as guys on the field, I think Trey Tucker has an opportunity to be that guy because of his speed. And the fact that nobody's really talking about him, I think he can open up this Luke Getsy offense and add another element to it that, again, nobody's talking about. We all talk about Devontae. We talk about Jacoby. We talk about Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer. We talk about 12 personnel, Zamir White in the running game, Alexander Madison. But not too many people are talking about the way that Trey Tucker could potentially stretch the field if he's right. If his hands are right and his footwork is right, then all of a sudden he could be that guy. But as you mentioned, right, I mean, Aiden O'Connell, Jim Wyman was from Pro Football Focus. You heard that conversation on Monday as he was a guest on my radio show on Friday, talking about that piece that he put out in Pro Football Focus. He did the AFC side of things. He did the breakdown for the Raiders. He explained why he put Aiden O'Connell. So you're not wrong. It was just really a matter of interpretation. Tyree Wilson is another guy that he mentioned that he thought about could be. And, of course, we've seen that as well along the text line. So, yeah, I guess we all could be right. And, again, depending on how we're looking at it and interpreting it, there's different guys that could definitely play that X factor role. But the Raiders definitely have a few options out there for that. But thanks so much for that call. As always, man, really good stuff. And that's all I got time for on today's show. Again, excited to be back out at practice. We're expected to talk to Minshew, O'Connell, and Malcolm Kuntz. And, of course, we'll talk to the coordinators before practice. So it's going to be a long day at HQ, but that's what we're here for, right? And all the good stuff that we get from it will definitely be here tomorrow on the Locked On Raiders podcast as we continue to roll through another week. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.